Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 7, Episode 24 of our weekly Q&A videos. As always, if you're listening to this or watching this, I should say, on YouTube, you can listen to this on all the major podcasting platforms by checking out the links in the description. And I guess I should say now, if you're listening to this on the podcasting platform and you've never heard us or watched us on YouTube, you can subscribe to us at BDCKR Gaming on YouTube.
Our videos are actually pretty good. It's not just Q&A stuff. We do a lot of gameplay videos.
Yeah, our videos are all right.
Yeah,
you might like them. I don't know.
I think they're
okay.
amazing. No, I don't.
Really. Yeah, sometimes every once in a while there's something, and so we're mentioning that because we're actually gonna come back around and talk about that later. We had a open call for somebody to comment on something, and they did reply to us, thankfully. So, anyways, getting into our first question, I guess that's a sneak preview. It comes from Ember Mist, and they say, "What are your top 3 favorite characters? Factor how good they are, how fun they are, and how cool they look."
So I do want to point out Ember Mist also posts on the Injustice subreddit, and they ranked number 1, I believe, in Android on a season.
There you go. So congratulations.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive.
It is.
And it was pretty much in line with what I was thinking it would take to finish number 1. The problem, I think, the biggest problem with Android is that they do not, when I say they, I mean whoever runs the servers, do not as good a job as iOS at cleaning up the leaderboard at the end of the season to get rid of hackers.
Yeah.
So there's people with, like 100 million battle points. And so it seems like it would be potentially wasted effort trying to just trying to rank number 1 to get the badge that shows first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, congratulations, Ember Mist.
That's pretty cool. And top 3 favorite characters. I feel like this is a hard question to answer for a couple of reasons, right? Because I think one way that you could look at this, your top 3 favorite characters would just have to be your favorite team, right? Because a lot of times your favorite team relies on everybody, and you don't ever really have the opportunity to play one character by themselves, right? Or your top 3 characters could be like the stars of your 3 favorite teams, right? The people that you think are the most important to them, or they could just be 3 sort of random characters that you just happen to like a lot. And so we've talked at length about our favorite type of character, which is Flash.
So now we're talking playability.
Yeah.
So we're talking how good his basics are, the animations. I mean, part of it too is, it's sort of when you're ready to really like something anyways.
Yeah.
So I think we would have liked whatever animation Flash had, even if it had been really crappy.
Yeah.
But given our avatar, I think we do have to give a shout out to Lobo.
Yeah.
And of the 2 Lobos, Bounty Hunter Lobo has such great potential. His Special 2, really cool animation. What sucks the most is that because the first hit of his Special 2 is not ranged, that you cannot use him effectively as your specialist, because you drop in like you normally do with almost any other character with Master's Death Cart and Tainted Totem. Master's Death Cart shoves them back a bit with all the little pitter-patter hits when you come in to build it with power. And if you do your Special 2 immediately,
you lose it.
You lose that first hit. It does a huge amount of damage. It's really a front-loaded special, so you lose a good chunk. I want to say potentially like a third or a half of the damage. And it's such a shame because his passive, which would make him even better, where each time he completes his Special 2 successfully, it gets stronger, and the damage over time lasts longer, and they can't tag out before the damage over time is done.
Yeah.
It would be so good, and it's such a shame, but he looks good. The player model, the character model looks really good. We like the character Lobo. And so Flash, Lobo, if you're I hadn't thought about that when you first mentioned that your favorite 3 characters are sort of one
unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say my favorite, this is going to be a cheat, my favorite 3 characters, Justice League. So you stick in any iteration of Superman, any iteration of Batman, any iteration of, well, not any iteration, New 52 Wonder Woman. Great team.
Yeah.
Maybe Aquaman swap out for one of them.
Yeah, and so And it is challenging too, because to me, honestly, the look matters. I think the least for me. I don't know if there's anybody who visually really stands out to me.
I know one.
Yeah,
Arkham Origins Batman with his stubble.
that's fair. Okay, but not in a good way. Yeah, and that's mostly when you use a super. And I would say the person who probably stands out the most visually is just the way that Static, just because of the way that he moves.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah, because he's unique.
Yeah. He seems just really sort of flowing, right? And, like...
His super is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with the big stick and the way he does the... I remember the first few times I played against Static, I just... Repeatedly, I couldn't block long enough. His special one was doing so many hits, and I would let go of my block too early, and then I might have avoided most of the damage, and then I got stunned at the end.
Yeah, and I think that does just speak to the sort of cool and weird way that he moves compared to everybody else. To the fact that there's literally like a significant learning curve, more so than almost anybody else, and just learning what his attacks looked and felt like.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people at this point, we've sort of gotten so used to them that I don't even know if I see them properly anymore, you know, like in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's some people who stand out a little bit to me, like Killing Joker with his like floral pattern shirt, right? Stands out a little bit to me.
Right.
But I wouldn't say he looks the coolest.
That's true. Who do you... So, by the characteristics, so Ember Mist mentioned how good they are, how fun they are, how cool they look. How good they are, it really has to be the Flashpoint team. I mean, we're seeing it right here, where people talk about replacing one Flashpoint character with another, but really, anytime you replace anyone, it's not really so much that... Well, it's sort of the flip side of they're better together than they are individually.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you take anybody off the team, the whole team, whoever's left behind, just gets worse.
Yeah, the Flashpoint team is like our desert island pick, right? Like if we had to start a new account, but for some reason we could get 3 characters at any level and elite level, and we had to pick 3, we'd pick the Flashpoint team.
Yeah. And they are the best, I think, bar none. How fun they are, I think. And not so much that... I guess there's different ways you can define fun, right? Some people like to play fun, meaning that the fights are really fast and you get to the rewards. For me, being fun is when I'm really engaged. And when I say engaged, means that I have to think a little bit as different situations. Because I think the Flashpoint team can handle different situations. Certain things come up, but there's not a lot of variations. Because
you don't play differently.
There's maybe 2 or 3 strategies that you need, depending on what the team looks like.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
A fun team can win if you are paying attention, but there's different ways to approach different situations, and if you don't approach the right situation in the right way, you run the risk of losing.
So I'll say that my most fun team, my most fun 3 characters are New 52, Wonder Woman, and two other Justice League members, because it's not as strong as Flashpoint, but it can handle pretty much everything as long as you're paying attention. Yeah. And I think that it's hard to maybe appreciate how much value there is in a team like that when you've been playing as long as we have, and it takes... Somebody commented earlier about how if we hadn't been doing the videos, they would have quit Injustice a long time ago. Yeah. And I sort of replied in jest and not in jest, joking, not joking, that if it hadn't been for the videos, we probably would have stopped. And one of the teams that I keep coming back to, and I've tried different variations, and I've really enjoyed, is that Justice League team. That's how fun they are. How cool they look. Who's the coolest looking?
That's what I was thinking. That's the part of it that doesn't factor as much for me.
I like Red Sun Green Lantern and his teammates because he gives them all that green armor. Yeah. That's cool looking. Who do I like? I mean, we just saw him right now. I like the Blackest Night team in terms of their aesthetics. Right. I think they have a pretty nice sort of look. But it's so hard, right? Like, again, I see them more for what they can do than what they look like, you know? Right. And so I think that makes it challenging. Like, the one thing I'll say is that Suicide Squad, like, unhinged Jokers don't look great. Oh, right. Yeah. And Elseworld Flash. I like the way Elseworld Flash
looks pretty cool. Yeah, I think this question would have been a lot easier to answer when I was sort of earlier on in my Injustice career. Doomsday looked pretty cool. The base school Doomsday looks pretty cool. Oh, right.
I like Pickle Suit Doomsday.
Pickle Suit Doomsday does not look cool at all. I like how he looks.
It's a different aesthetic. I think he looks great. It's a different aesthetic.
Yeah, I think he looks great. I don't think he looks cool.
Yeah. he looks hot because he's all stuffed into his pickle suit.
Yeah.
So he's overheated. He can't sweat properly. We were just having this discussion. What are the 4 ways to we should have looked this up. I meant to look this up. So the 4 ways to transfer heat, right? I think there's 4.
Yeah.
There's radiation. There's convection.
Yeah.
There's evaporation.
And then conduction.
And conduction, is that it?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know if that's 4. I have no clue.
And is that in general, or is that that's specific? No, it can't be specific to people. With other things evaporate when it's not just us when we sweat.
I have no clue.
All right.
I couldn't answer that for you. We probably should have looked that up, but that's okay. Another time.
Another time.
So I think
does that? Yeah.
It sort of answers the question. There was some answers in there. There was answers for each thing. I don't know if we came up with an exact top 3 list, which is why we'll never be able to do list videos, I guess. No Watch Mojo in our future, but
that's true.
Well,
is it that's really clickbaity, right? Like I guess part of the reason I don't want to do those kind of videos is that I'm always annoyed whenever I see something that looks like it could be halfway interesting. They do a top whatever list, and they don't do a very good job of it. And they have some blind spots, and I'd really much rather. And then it becomes following the comments and the different people contributing theirs, and it's clickbaity because it's those kind of articles I think sort of write themselves a little bit, right? They're not part of a cohesive whole, and it's to encourage people to read. It's almost like they intentionally leave out obvious choices to enrage their audience.
To like cause engagement.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
See, I feel like some list stuff is good. I think you can do it well, and I think if you like follow through, I think that's the thing about clickbait is that really the main issue that a lot of people have with it is the non-fulfilling of the expectations, right? And I've seen stuff that feels like it would be clickbait, right? But then when you actually like watch it or like look at it, it does actually follow through with exactly what is promised. And I think in that case, I have no issue with that at all. I think it's that lack of fulfillment of expectation that's actually an issue. So if we have a list and we say, hey, this is just our personal opinion, and then we have a good list and we have something that's well thought out, like even if we don't end up perfect, I think, I don't have an issue with the theory of it. I just don't think that the lists are that useful.
So maybe it's the execution, because I guess I'm reading a lot of the bad articles. Yeah. And I feel like I end up reading those and I end up feeling dirty afterwards. No, I don't. I just feel like I wasted my time. Anyways.
It is a very consumable form of content, and if they do a good job, I don't know. I feel like clickbait can sometimes be good, honestly. Like I think it has a negative connotation, but an interesting title, if they follow through on it, just means that it's an interesting video that is succinctly explained,
Yeah, I guess it's more just the volume, that there's a lot that don't follow through, and it sort of poisoned the idea for me, and I feel I get a visceral kind of gut reaction when I see those.
That's fair. Yeah. So there we go. Our next
it's
comment comes. This is the follow-up that we're talking about. Comes from Weffery, who's a person who discovered us on YouTube after months of listening to us on podcast format. I think they said about 4 months in the original comment, if I am remembering correctly, which I might not be. And they say, I found you guys on the podcast format because someone on Reddit recommended you guys and told me to listen on the podcast format. I think his Reddit was called Wacky Gaming or something, which is a commenter that we recognize. So that would make sense. Yeah. And then I've been watching a lot of your multiplayer videos lately, and I am really enjoying them. Keep up the good work. And so, I read this, and it made sense to me.
Sure.
Right? Like, I think I hadn't considered the fact that there could be a Reddit recommendation, and that as a format makes the most sense for somebody being recommended, like not like an in-person friend telling somebody about it or anything else.
So you were saying it didn't make sense to me until you explained sort of the mechanics that there are people who, and I don't do this, people who listen to podcasts and stuff while they're playing, and that technically it's easy to listen to something on your device while you're still playing.
I can listen to a podcast while I'm playing a mobile game and listen and play on the same device.
But you can't play a YouTube video and listen to it in the background while you're playing.
No, you can't, unless you have a second device, And, well, I think if you have YouTube Premium, maybe you can, but you have to pay a monthly subscription fee for YouTube.
Well, YouTube Premium, you can download it, right?
You can download it, but you can also play in the background. That's one thing. You can do audio, like background playing with YouTube Premium. Yeah, so it makes sense to me, because if I'm playing a mobile game
Right.
and listening to a podcast. A lot of the times, the reason why I'm playing the mobile game is because I don't have a second device.
Right.
Like if I'm sitting in front of my computer, I'd be playing a different game while listening
Right.
to a podcast a
Right.
lot of the time. Or if I'm like, it's a natural limitation. And so when I want to watch like a YouTube video and play a mobile game at the same time, a lot of times, like if I'm in my room or whatever, where I don't have a computer, I either have to like haul my laptop in there or like, use like an old phone that I have to like make sure that I keep charged or something.
Right.
So to me, if I was listening to stuff, the podcast is really the way that I would like to listen to it. Yeah.
Right.
But it is always surprising to me. I think it's also just because of our numbers are so low.
Yes.
That it feels like inherently our numbers for the podcast downloads and podcast listens would have to be like a proportion of people who followed us on YouTube and then sort of moved over.
Right.
But I guess now we've been corrected, and my perception of it is corrected. There's at least one person who found us initially from the podcast, which, in my opinion, if somebody found us from the podcast and then moved over and started watching our videos, that to me feels like there's some sort of concrete value of having the podcast out for us and not just sort of the value to our listenership, right, who maybe gets to listen to it in a more convenient format.
Right. So it's actually helpful to us instead of the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. I mean, I know, again, we're like gaining like one view that we've been able to track so far.
Yay.
And we've lost like only like the 10 or whatever or however many average downloads we get, which I haven't checked in a while, so I don't actually know the specific numbers there. But I think it's cool to know about that category of people existing who watch our channel.
Right.
So,
Right.
Even it's really hard. We've talked about this before, but it's really hard to sort of get a sense of what the volume means. So getting like 200 views versus 400 views versus 1,000 views, you feel better the bigger the number goes, but it's not like when we have like 305 views on a video and then 300 on a different one, we go, oh, 5 extra people watched us. That's, that's numbers. But when you hear about somebody specifically like finding you from, Reddit, listening to the podcast and then moving to the video, that's a whole new type of person watching our stuff.
Right.
And so that's sort of easier to codify. It's easier to feel that in the same way that it's easier to feel people who comment.
Right. See, this is the thing, that we have these tools that let us get an idea of what's happening.
Yeah.
And they're just very limited, and sometimes maybe it skews our view because what are we influenced by? I think we're influenced a lot by the people who are commenting consistently.
Yeah.
Who have things to say besides, this is what's happening in my game, it's not working, can somebody help me? And this is the other tools we have are very what's the word? It's just not very detailed. There's not a lot of when we have groups of information, like we can't tease out from like you were saying, the number of views, the number of monetized views, the minutes watched, the time per video.
A lot of stuff means nothing. I feel like the strongest way that we like per person engagement happens is obviously anybody who supports us on Patreon, just because it's significant. We're like, oh, if we recognize their name from the comments or not, and then we read their name out every week, and there's a certain gratitude from anybody who's supporting us on Patreon that goes both ways, where we know they like our stuff and they want to support us, and we really appreciate the fact that they're sort of supporting us in this way. And then after that, I think one step down, not that we're like ranking them, but like it's really like comments and patrons, I think, are like the two real sort of driving things that give us a sense of what people think about our stuff. Like even the dislikes, right? Like I don't really pay attention to them on a video to video basis.
Right.
So if somebody dislikes our video, I don't notice, I don't care.
Somebody hate watches us.
Yeah,
that's a different category too.
It doesn't have an impact on me, and likes are always appreciated. It's cool, right? And sometimes, especially when it's the kind of video that it's a new type of thing and we want to go back to it and look at it and see how it's doing and get a sense of it, we're consuming all of the metrics. But when like a Q&A goes out, I read the comments and I think that's it. Like I don't check the likes or dislikes. I'm not checking how many views each one gets. Every once in a while I might, go back like a month's worth and be like, okay, well, how have the past like bunch of them done, right? But on an individual basis, they don't matter. So it really is just like that sort of direct obvious support that we're engaging with is the only thing that we get a sense of.
Well, what I actually look at the most often is how much money we get on a video, and I think, is this a 50-cent video or is this a $1 video?
Wow. We're really rolling in it.
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody supports us on Patreon. We're obviously making more money than we know what to do with off of our
50-cent videos.
Off of our 45-minute videos. We're getting a whole $1.
Sometimes.
It's like
sometimes.
You could buy
but
like a fraction of a pack of gum with that kind of money.
I don't think would it pay the electricity it cost us to make the video?
Probably not. I don't think so.
It's like remember way back when mining Bitcoin was a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And the cost in electricity, never mind the sunk capital costs where you're going through graphics cards.
Yeah.
And, you buy it, you're using graphics card for something else, but a graphic card has a limited lifespan, right?
Yeah.
Like, once you use it enough, it'll eventually fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why does it fail? Is it the memory? Is it the onboard, like, solid-state memory built in?
I have no clue how technology works. I just know for most components, right, they're old enough where you use them enough and they fail.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Something happens to it.
So it's funny to me that
the technology magic gets all used up. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I appreciate Jeffrey coming back and letting us know, because it is definitely like, it just never, as a category, it just never would have occurred to me
It's a
that there
fun
was
case study.
anybody there. Yeah.
Yeah. So
for
interesting and kind of cool.
So thanks, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thanks. Getting into our next question, this was in response to us talking about Suicide Squad Harley Quinn. And so it's from Junk Mails, and it was like a follow-up to their initial question that we answered.
And the question was whether putting in Batman Ninja Lord Joker instead of Suicide Squad Joker would potentially be better as a way to exploit the passive.
Yeah. And so they say, thanks BDCKR for the answer. Much appreciated. I did try out those characters after I leveled up Harley and found out the same, albeit the hard way. The idea looks good in theory, but is anything but in practice. Still need to get many good characters, as I started playing the game back in April and still don't have many characters. By the way, you can't not love the Master's Death card. So good. One more question for you guys. Do you ever lose matches when you're attacking? And so, first off, I think before we even get into directly the question that was answered here, I think what's cool is that those sort of like questions to ask about stuff, we really appreciate other people asking them too, because when we have everything, right, those questions come from a lot of times speculation and not having everything yet. And sort of that long-term planning, being like, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this, and when I get these guys, here's how I'm going to use them, and it's going to be really cool. And I think it can be harder when you have everything to think about stuff, right? Because when you have less stuff, you make whatever it is you can out of it, and a lot of times that involves being a little bit more creative. And when you have specific goals, you're really thinking about sort of a character really fully. You're taking them, you're saying, okay, here's who I'm working for, this is why, this is how I'm going to use them. And that there's a level of thoroughness of consideration there that is harder when you say, okay, well, who's the third person for this team? And then you look at your library of, like, I don't even know how many characters in the game, like 100 and...
Right. Because you're forced, because
of
the time you put in, you're forced to use them as you get them.
Yeah.
This is why it's always interesting to me, the question when people ask, well, who should I put on this team? A lot of it should be sort of determined by necessity, who you've got.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just an odd question to me, because you have to have enough resources, but not enough time playing to need to have an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting mix. It feels like it should be a much smaller group than it is for the number of questions about, all right, here's my roster, who should I make a team out of?
Yeah. And so that we really do continue to appreciate like questions, especially when they're like specific, targeted, like almost suggestions for teams. Like you had their junk mails, just because I think it makes it a lot easier for us to have that sort of starting point to work off of. And you definitely, at the point of the game that you're at, have a different perspective that is sometimes potentially more useful for thinking up specific new teams.
I think there's some things that we take for granted, a combination of, so when we do things a certain way, sometimes it's easy to remember why we did it. And sometimes we just start... I think the other part, actually, let me take another step back. I think we've got reasonable instincts for seeing characters, seeing their passive, thinking about the different gears that are available, and unlocking their potential. I mean, a good example of this was Batgirl. When Cloak of Destiny first came out, and it was described, but it hadn't been released yet. So it was in the release notes. There was a description about it, and I think maybe some hackers had shown what the gear looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And so our instinct was Batgirl, Cloak of Destiny, increased stun damage. Ooh, her special one is going to be amazing with it, and it was.
Yeah.
So when you go there, we're often right about what the potential is, and then we get there pretty quickly. But sometimes there's another kind of idea that sneaks up on you that you don't realize until you've had a chance to play with it a bit and see different things done with it.
Yeah.
And I like this kind of question, even though the switch wasn't helpful. If we don't remember the reason why we did it originally, sometimes it's worth going back to figure out whether it's because we considered it and it was no good.
Yeah.
Or because... Oh, actually, that was a Batman Ninja Lord Joker team with Suicide Squad Harley Quinn.
There we go.
Or whether it was turned out to be no good, or it was just something that slipped our minds, didn't occur to us, and because we got so used to playing a certain way, we just never came back around to the idea.
Yeah. So those are always cool. And so the question itself here is, do you ever lose matches when you're attacking? And so the answer is, most of the time, no. Sometimes, yes. And we normally know when it's going to happen because it's when we're experimenting with other teams. One of our sort of criteria for a successful team is that we don't lose online matches.
Yeah.
Because we have a bunch of teams that we know will not lose online matches. So for something new to sort of be added to the list of teams that we like playing unless you're going back to, I think there was some teams like a little while back, probably like more than a year at this point at least, that we did on online multiplayer where we were like sort of right at the razor's edge and we weren't always winning.
Oh, and so we were sort of making point. I mean, it's basically when we're not trying to win, not necessarily trying to win a fight.
Yeah.
The goal isn't to win a fight. Like, let's say we're doing Phantom Zone tasks, or we're testing something out, or we're trying to reproduce something. You remember those when there used to be glitches, and there's not glitches that you could exploit to get an advantage, but glitches where you would mess around and do stuff like when you could make Darkseid get really huge.
Massive. Yeah.
Because we would take Elseworld Flash and I think trigger Elseworld Flash's passive in the middle of his special too, and he'd get huge and wouldn't shrink
and then
down.
stay big. Yeah.
Or I think who was it that would disappear? Was it Reverse Flash? Stuff like that. So yeah, we do lose, but I guess
we only lose in online multiplayer when we make a decision that we know leaves us open to losing, and we can actively not make any decisions that leave us open to losing and only ever win in online multiplayer is, I think.
Yeah, because I hate losing. Even when I'm experimenting, I hate losing, so I'm trying to win. But I feel like unless there's something interesting in the fight, when we lose, that's not the kind of footage I want to put up on the channel. But also, a lot of the footage that we're using is our grinding footage.
Yeah, that's also true. So, we do lose more often than our channel would make you believe, just because in a lot of when we have a new team, in that initial testing phase is one of the times that we lose. And so one of the things is that we need to play it enough that we are winning consistently enough that we can, have that footage.
Or if it's not good enough, right? That teammate, a team that we think is worth trying or somebody suggests, may not be good enough to actually be a winning team.
Yeah, and then that normally doesn't make the cut for a video either. Yeah, and I think one of the most notable examples of times that we lost, just because it was the most painful, I think, was when you were trying to beat Survivor.
Oh, yeah.
For that beating Survivor video, just because it's such a time commitment, and if you lose right at the end, you've wasted like 40 minutes.
Right.
Which sucks. And so, there was a couple, I don't remember how many takes that took you, but it was at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, because it's not like, I mean, again, there's people have mentioned recently that there is a air quotes new glitch for Survivor. It's not really new. People knew about that. I mean, this is when people were manipulating to do the spin, because you used to be able to respin it if you would just exit Survivor and come back into it. I don't think you can do that anymore. But then if you lost a fight, or you're losing a fight, you just exit Survivor, you come back, you can just continue and sort of have a do-over. And sometimes you would even get a different team. So on whichever level there was certain possibilities of teams, you'd potentially re-roll and get a different one that's easier. But I think there was value, and I think that might even be one of our most popular all-time popular videos.
I think
is
so.
the completing Survivor, even though it's still reasonably popular, even though there have been new levels added. But at the time, I don't think anybody had done like a real-time video. There's a few people who had done like a sped-up version of it.
Yeah. There was a lot of talking in that. I think that video was like a precursor in a lot of ways to what the podcast is now.
Right.
But there we go. So that's that question. We have sort of two related things. So we have a comment from Ian Connor and Daniel O. And I'm only going to read the first part of Daniel O so that we can talk a little bit. And then we'll get back to maybe the other stuff he says, because it's all good. But So Ian Connor says, can we add a cat update on the end of your recap of weekly events? And Daniel O said, keep the cat. I've also never raised pets outside of fish, but if I had to, I would pick a cat. I like my friend's dogs, but they're too much energy for me. And so, first off, Ian Connor, we love the idea. We will do cat updates in general, I think, when there's stuff to talk about. But probably here, because we don't think that people in the weekly recap, we've sort of injected as much of unrelated stuff that we like to talk about in the weekly recap as we feel would be a great idea, and we think it's best for the sort of stuff that's just about us to maybe stay here, just because that's where people go for that. I think it would be interesting if we do end up doing cat updates. Do you think it's better at the beginning or the end? And I'm asking both you and our commenters.
I have no clue. Our videos are not the kind of videos that I would watch.
That's fair.
So I don't know. Usually I judge stuff by how I feel about it.
Okay.
And
so then I guess let us know in the comments, cat updates beginning or end, or I guess just randomly sprinkled in the middle. If people really care about the cat updates, that might be a way to get people to make sure they watch the whole thing. But I don't think we want to do that to people. I think I'm just as happy for people to get what they want and leave.
Because they're happening. It's not a question of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, so we're keeping the cat. I think that's the biggest news. Did
we mention that last week?
No, we didn't. We weren't sure. That's why we asked people if we should keep the cat last week.
Right.
So
we're in the adoption process.
Yeah, the update is we're going through the adoption process. Cat is not currently here. It needs to get all of its shots. It needs to get neutered and everything. And then we will be having a new cat. So we've been prepping our house, getting ready for the addition, which means that there will be continued cat updates and perhaps cat pictures.
Maybe even cat video at the end of this if we run out of play footage.
That's true, yes. But just that's sort of cool. And we're all pretty excited over here at the BDCKR gaming household.
So what's funny is that I've never had an inclination to have a pet, like other than fish.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it probably makes sense because it's not that I wanted a cat, but I do want this cat.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference in the world, right? It's like being in a relationship. It's not as healthy to be, well, maybe it is healthy. I'm not so much interested in a relationship just to have a relationship.
Yeah.
The individual should matter.
Yeah. I think that's a good perspective to take on it. Another thing that we can do here is we can do the name reveal, because I think you were a little bit worried last time that there would be some way that from the name somebody could...
It's an instinct. You know what? It's just from years of doing this YouTube stuff, it's just an instinct.
Yeah, better safe than sorry to not give out the information.
Listen,
in case somebody stole the cat from underneath their nose.
If you like any other privacy thing, if you're not sure, better to not say it, because once you said it, you can't take it back.
That's fair. But now we have sort of gone through the process to make sure that it is going to be okay. I think your doubts have been appropriately, or your worries have been appropriately addressed. Yep. So we can tell everybody the name. So last week we talked about how when we met him, he was being harassed by crows. So we have named him CB, the initial CB, which stands for crowbait. Now we won't be calling him crowbait on a day-to-day basis because we think that would be a little mean, maybe. But that is sort of the name. I think I like it personally because it involves the way that we met him. Right. And I think it's a fun little sort of scrappy name, and he's like a little scrappy sort of dude. So that's cool. And the other thing that we like about it that makes it very fun is that we also, all my friends who have told about the cat, will just brainstorm and call him anything with the initials C and B.
Okay. So to me, it harkens back to a TV show. And it was, I always knew it as Hammy Hamster. I know there were different variations of it, but it was, they'd take animals. There would be hamster, there'd be a guinea pig, there'd be a mouse.
Yeah.
They would be doing sort of human things. People would be doing their voices for them. So it was Hammy Hamster time. I wish there was something, maybe it was like some river, Tales of the Riverside or something.
Doesn't matter.
Anyways, it doesn't matter. But the guinea pig's name was GP.
Yeah.
And the obvious thing is guinea pig. But there was a running joke through the show.
Yeah.
And so there's one time where he was flying an airplane.
Yeah.
Like literally. I'd have to dig this out. I'm sure this is up on YouTube.
The context almost doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he was saying, yeah, that's why I'm called GP. It's for great pilot, great pilot. So it'd be a joke. So whatever the show, what was happening in the show, I don't remember the other versions of it.
Yeah.
But it would always be, the initials would be GP, would stand for something else, and never for guinea pig. Mm-hmm. So to me, CB is great. Like it could be Citizens Band for the radio.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's some of the ones you like. CB standing for Charles Barkley, because then you can call him Chuck.
Yes.
Some of the ones that I found that I really like are Cake Boss.
That's good.
Yeah. There's been a lot of other ones.
Chocolate Bar.
Yeah. Catboy. And so
Catboy's perfect.
This is also an open call. We would love to hear in the comments anybody's acronym for CB. What do you think CB should stand for? What's another nickname for him? And if we like them, I will genuinely call my cat this sometimes. So this is, not for nothing. And then also, if in any future update, if you ever want to refer to him, this won't be the cat update. I think it'll be the CB corner.
That's funny.
If you have anything to say about our cat, you don't have to engage, but we would love if you just picked a random thing starting with C and B. Turn a phrase that you liked and refer to him that way.
Right.
We love to hear whatever you come up with.
Right.
So that's just fun. Yeah. He's got a fun name. He's a fun dude, and soon he will be in our home. And we have like a lot of cat food and litter and like grooming apparati. What's the plural of apparatus? Apparatuses.
Yeah.
We have a lot of grooming stuff. We have like 4 different grooming things. We have like a brush.
Yeah.
We have like a hand brush. We have like a glove, soft bristle, like rubber thing.
Yeah.
And then we have like a weird, it almost looks like a razor, but it's like soft plastic.
Yeah. So it's meant to pull off loose hairs. I mean, it's not like it would be that unusual. I have, and actually, coincidentally, I currently am cat sitting for the neighbors. So I'm going to their house a couple times a day.
Yeah.
And feeding their cat, brushing their cat. Cat's standoffish. This would probably be a good place to put in a little clip, because we're out of video or gaming footage, or we're adding footage after.
Yeah.
But it's very standoffish. It'll come. When it knows when I'm there, it knows that I'm willing to brush it for a bit, so it will lie down on the ground in front of me.
Yeah.
And sometimes not even in front of me, but lie down like far enough away. I say, I could reach over and stretch out my back and do it. Lazy cat, very standoffish. Never climbs on you. Never does anything. Like, it's crazy to me that a stranger cat, like some clearly knows people but doesn't know me.
Yeah.
And is willing to totally be comfortable. Which is part of the appeal, because he's almost like a dog.
Yeah, he's like dog level affectionate, and he's apparently just befriended everybody at the shelter too.
Right.
That spends any length of time with him. So it's good to know that people have a great time with him. That I have people who like want to come over, who are like willing to get like COVID tested so that they can like hang out with the cat, because we're not gonna let anybody like into our home to like pet our cat and like get us sick, right? But there are people who want to get tested so that they can hang out with the cat, and
that's kind of cool.
I don't entirely blame them. It's a good time. He's a great cat.
Yeah. Now I meant to keep this one short, but I do want to finish up on a point that Daniel O had mentioned.
Yeah, so we're gonna finish Daniel O's comment, because we talked about the cat part. But the rest of it, there's a lot of good stuff here too. So talking about last week, he says, I like the conversation of transferable skills in sports, but I'd like to note that regarding video games, I would only consider similar genres to be compatible with each other, because while the skill set might seem similar, hand-eye coordination, the data you have to keep track of is vastly different. A few examples which come to mind are how DeFran, who was the best at Valorant when it came out due to his extensive competitive FPS background, and Faker, who became the best at League transitioning from another MOBA, both have a variety game streams where they often do pretty poorly. I also remember seeing a clip from Twitch of Jonas Neubauer, a 7-time classic Tetris world champion, saying he wouldn't do too well in modern Tetris games because those are focused more on speed and comboing descent lines rather than simply surviving. He said that while he suffered a lot from the Tetris effect and could play entire games of the NES version in his head, the stack theory of other Tetris games made it hard for him to visualize what sort of pre-planning and control schemes one would require for other games. I find it interesting how even the same games in name can have a skill set different enough that the world champion of one game admits he would do poorly in another. Another thing which came to mind as I was checking my timestamps, I actually used the opposite argument of score when trying to rank sports with my friends. While I'm a huge basketball fan, I admit that soccer is the objectively better sport, not simply because of its universality, but because of how easy it is to watch casually. You can turn on a soccer game at any time, have a sense of how the game is going, and enjoy it while doing something else. In contrast, basketball's fast pace sort of requires you watch it with intent focus. The same applies to American football. Maybe it's just because I like multitasking or playing games like Injustice while I watch stuff. I'd rather turn on some soccer to watch casually, though right now it's all about the NBA playoffs, baby.
Yeah, no, so, I completely agree. I mean,
I fully agree with you too.
So, because if you don't want to pay attention, definitely lower scoring games are better, where stuff happens and they replay it and then you can see it.
Yeah,
I think I've always felt like, because I come at it from when I was younger, I used to go to my dad used to be able to get comped Blue Jays tickets from work whenever they have some sort of performance bonuses, right? So I remember going to the Jays games in the 80s when they weren't winning just in that transition when they weren't winning much to when they started winning before they got their championships in the 90s. They were really successful in the mid 80s. Like the drive of 85, I still remember very vividly, and how they came really close a few times. And there's something to be said when you're actually going to be at the game. Sure, it's great to be in with the crowd and cheering along and stuff, but when not a lot happens, like baseball is that kind of game where there's no clock really. I mean, they're doing something different now, but a game could last potentially indefinitely, and no matter how low or how far behind you are, you can always catch up. But if you're gonna be, so my mindset is, if I'm gonna be at a game though, I want stuff to be happening because I'm there for that game. Yeah. So
watching passively versus like actively are two very different modes, and that which sport is better to watch definitely depends a lot on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree.
The other thing, talking about how the skill set is different within video games, I also totally agree with that. I think that was the point that I was making during the video.
And I totally agree with that too, and I clearly did not do a good job of expressing myself, because I think what I'm talking about is pre-specialization, because the physical part that you need, or sort of the physical mental part that you need, is that hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
But how you get good or great at a game is that specialization, where the example I was using was how compression, right? Yeah. You don't get a good compression algorithm until you've been doing it long enough that you can play it back over and over again. And that's part of what you get, besides fine-tuning the little sort of repetitive motor
skills,
like those routines, sort of like whatever groove you have for a physical thing, like if it's shooting with in hockey, or taking free throws in basketball,
or stopping moving before you fire, and then like counter strafing for like accuracy of aim in CS:GO and Valorant,
right? Which
is really hard to do if you come from another game. I've realized, as somebody who plays other shooters, really challenging to learn.
Yeah, exactly that. So that the underlying thing is good before you specialize, but after specializing, the act of specialization takes so long that unless you are absolutely brilliant, like there's certain two sport stars that were absolutely brilliant. I'm thinking for my generation it was Bo Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Who was an all-star caliber baseball player and football player. Deion Sanders, also baseball and football.
So you were more just talking about how the raw capability of these athletes means that there was a lot of sports that they could have been equally good at if from the start that was what they were doing.
Right. So it's defined more by opportunity than it is by them being good only for that one sport.
Yeah.
And so it totally makes sense, right? Because I mean, I see this with injustice, right? Where if you've put in the amount of time, do you really want to be starting over from scratch when you know what you're capable of?
Yeah.
And it's I think when you get that good, it's got to be frustrating to start all over again. I felt a sort of a something similar to this with playing Boggle, where there are versions. The biggest difference, the biggest variation, different dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
So I got really good with the Salpods dictionary, which is an international one, and there's one that's I think used mostly in North America. So different words, some words count, some words don't.
Yeah.
So I hated playing that because I felt like I was sort of playing at a disadvantage.
It's almost like a foreign language.
And it would have taken me too long to get good enough to be competitive at the same level.
Yeah.
And I really didn't want to do that.
Yeah, that's like the guy who like memorized like most of the French dictionary and won like the Scrabble French championships too.
Right.
Where it's just like a totally different like skill.
Yeah, and when you've put in the time and you put in the work, the prospect of doing it all over again sometimes can be overwhelming and just not worth the commitment.
But there we go, and I think that's the last thing we wanted to say. That brings us to the end of the episode. So I'd like to give a shout out to Eliza. I'll call him Crow Caton. She doesn't think CV or Crowbait is a good enough name. I don't know. I thought it was fine. This shout out has been brought to you by moral grandstanding about the name Crowbait. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to everybody who is supporting us on Patreon.
And that would be Consul Peasant and Edwoon at the Last Word tier, Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier, Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., and Irvin Ruiz, who support us on the credited level, and Chris Wolf, Scarlet Danny, Awesome Gamer 241, and Pavu RS at the gratitude level.
There you go. Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.